So one of the options is you can withdraw the money. Again, if you're young, this is not recommended. Like if you're not close to retirement or you've built up your finances to where you can retire, it's not recommended to go ahead and do that because, like you mentioned, there is a penalty for doing so. All right, let's get the show running.
Oh, snap. I'm about to cough.
Perfect.
That ice cream was cold. Cold.
All right, so
Maybe that wasn't a good idea.
Before we officially get started, just a reminder, we still are recording our podcast, our episodes, virtually, because again, we're still trying to be very respectful of the whole social distancing. We also want to remind you guys that if you love our content, please share it with your friends and family. Show us some love on Instagram. We'd love to have you on there. Or if you know somebody who'd be interested in some of the topics we've been talking about, do that as well. And go ahead.
I just feel like let us know if there's anything you think we could like work on or anything you want us to cover, because right now we're not getting any feedback from anybody.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, okay, I guess we're doing something okay.
Yeah, exactly. So. Or if there's something that we've done that you want more of, then, hey, like, you know, let us know. Also, I don't want to give too many details, but we just kind of want you to know that we have something else in the works. It's very exciting. I think it'll be something really cool. So just be on the lookout for our announcements coming in the coming episodes and weeks. We have something brewing. Okay, that one came out naturally.
The amount of coffee puns we can use is kind of great.
It is.
Good topic we picked.
Exactly. So that to the side, we'll go ahead and just jump into episode 6. Our first topic is, I think, one of those topics that affects a lot of people, but we all kind of, or many of us may, I think it's like what would you call it? Like a spectrum. You either have the people who have it and deal and like know everything about it.
Yeah.
You have people who have it and are like, okay, I guess whatever this is sounds like something I need. And then you have the people who don't have it but have heard of it and they don't feel like there's a need to really learn more about it.
Yeah.
So we're talking about 401k. Now, I feel like a lot of people have, I almost want to say everyone, but there's always like that one person. So we're just going to say most people have heard of 401k. Whether you have it, you're familiar with it or not, we're going to go ahead and explain it anyway, because I've recently spoke to somebody about this who was asking me questions about how my company did it. And so that's why I felt it was relevant to bring up and kind of just showcase superficially. Like,
talk about it.
Exactly.
Okay. So the basic definition is a savings and investing plan offered by an employers that gives employees a tax break on money that they set aside for retirement.
Exactly. So the way the wording I have is, it's a tax advantage defined contribution account offered by many employers to their employees. So it's just your company is offering this retirement program plan for you as an employee to be able to contribute to. So in the future when you retire, hey, this is kind of like a savings that you saved already.
Kind of built up, yeah.
Exactly. Now, interestingly enough, and this I did not know, which I don't know if it's going to make me sound not very smart, but I did not know this. 401k is actually named after a section of the U.S. Internal Revenue Code. So,
yeah.
I mean, I didn't know that. I mean, I think in finance, you could just come up with stuff and just, in general, you just accept it. That was me. So, there you go. If you didn't know that.
It is what it is. It's going to stay there.
Exactly. Now, as an employee, you can make contributions by, reoccurring by that money being withheld from your paycheck. So you go in, usually this happens when you come on board with your company. You're allowed to decide how much or what percentage you want, I think it's annually, you want taken away so that you can contribute to it. And a lot of these, quite a few companies will do what they call as matching contributions. So let's say if I want to contribute 5%, and that's like the minimum, like you have to do that so that your company can match you, then they will put in an additional 5%. And so usually it's recommended for you to save the percentage that your company is willing to match you, because, hey, like that's kind of free money. That's kind of money saying, hey, you put that in, then we'll meet you and we'll also do that as well.
Yeah, but I mean, like, just because you're having 10% set aside doesn't mean you can't add more to it.
Oh, yeah.
But your company won't go any further above that percentage that you've already set.
Exactly, And there are two types of 401k. There's the traditional 401k, and then there's the Roth 401k. Now, I believe personally I didn't do Roth, so I'm not too familiarized with it in the sense of personal experience. But what I was going to tell you before we started recording is I actually took like an accounting class and a finance class where like I was tested on this, but I didn't do very well in both classes. So to me, I was laughing whenever I was seeing this, because this is all like familiar to me by like looking at it, but it didn't register in my mind because I think at the time I was just like, I can't just read a pretend problem and then just, to me, I think now that it's like through experience and through like working and having to sign up for this stuff, is that it forced me to like really like, hey, look, this is what it is how it works. But that's okay. I passed, but
I honestly only have information basically on 401k, like the traditional one. Like, I knew there was another one, but I no information on that at all. Like,
well, the main difference is basically how you get taxed by it. So, for the traditional, I believe is you're getting taxed. I'm gonna doubt myself right now. Okay, so you're getting taxed as you're doing it. You know what? I'm not gonna try to like force myself into saying it, because it's one or the other. So one of them, basically you get taxed as it's being set aside, and the other one you're not being taxed, but when you withdraw it, then you get taxed. So it's just the timing of when you're getting taxed for that money and when you don't. That's the biggest difference, which for some people makes a huge a bigger impact, especially if you're getting closer to retirement. Does it make more sense to actually pull that money out now? So it's a lot of timing and qualifications and money, and it can get complicated, but we won't go down that rabbit hole. Now, also be careful not to confuse 401k with pension plans. Pension plans are very, very, very similar, but it's actually more on the employer side. The employer is making that contribution for your employee, as opposed to 401k where it's flipped. It's kind of, that responsibility falls on the employee, because now it's on me. How much do I want to contribute? Pension plan's a little different, and they used to be more popular, but I think nowadays a lot of companies have been leaning more towards
the 401k.
Exactly. Now, you must be about 15. I mean, I thought this was funny. It said 59 and a half.
In order to withdraw without having any penalty?
Yes.
Yeah.
But I was like, all right.
Hold on, you're one day ahead of your half.
Yep.
You're not there yet. Hold on. So I know here we're talking about like what it stands for, or like where the name came from.
Mm-hmm.
And so I read that the first 401k plan was born in 1981 after Ted Bena, I don't know how to pronounce his name. Again, another name I can't pronounce. Tried using that IRS tax code section that you had named before for Johnson Co's. I don't know. It's abbreviated. I'm assuming company, and I wrote it wrong. And so that's kind of where it stemmed from. Okay. But it wasn't officially added until 1978.
Oh, okay.
That an employer could create a retirement plan. So, I mean, it was added in 1978, and he tried to use it in 1981. There we go. I said it wrong.
Okay. Now,
and then...
Okay, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I was going to say that 45% of people in the U.S. haven't saved any money toward retirement, which is a big number.
Yeah.
But then it's like, some people can't. And
yeah. Well, and here's the thing. I have mixed feelings about this, right? Not trying to judge people's circumstance, but there's a huge difference. So I think part of the problem is there's the opportunity to do it, but we're not educated enough to understand. It almost seems like it is really like a foreign language, because even while I was researching this, then like on one of these things I'm about to say, then it was like, and then you have an IRA, and then you have this, and then you have that, and you're like, if I haven't taken a class before, this is just a bunch of acronyms that I'm like over my head, you know?
Yeah, I feel like it should definitely be taught in high school. Like, because that's when you're going into the so-called, like, real world where you're going to have to deal with this on your own and kind of handle all this information. Like, I took my class my senior year of college, literally the semester I graduated. And so I didn't have any of this information until I took that class, and now, like, my eyes were open. I was like, so that's what all those words and acronyms are that I heard, but never had an understanding of.
Right. And even if it's not high school, like even in college, like, hey, they're so fixated and with good reason to prepare students when it comes to career fairs, but part of it, that's getting the job. But what happens when you have the job? Like, when I started off, then you have so many benefits. Then you're looking at health. Depending on what your company's providing. Yeah. But, okay, let's say you get everything. Then they're telling you, do you want premium? Do you want HSA or FSA? And you're thinking, what
are these words?
What is it? What difference does it make for my position? Like, is it a big deal? Is it not a big deal? So unless you have somebody close to you that has already done it, is educated, or understands what's happening, then you kind of fall back on that person. You're like, okay, can you help me through it? But if you don't, that's what I'm saying. That's part of the issue with that, like 45%. It's probably because they're not aware of this, and some of it may not be their fault. Now, on the flip side, like you said, some people don't do it because their company may not offer that.
Yeah.
Now, then there's also that question, you know, there are so many, like, I don't know what the proper term for it is, but there are other, like, savings accounts that doesn't come through your company, but that you can still save aside for, like life insurance or whatever, you know, or savings retirement plan, where even though it's not your company, you're still saving that money aside for when you retire. So
yeah, I feel like there's that sort of responsibility if you are able, like, if you can financially save and put money apart. There's a part where people don't, because they just have no idea, like, what to do, and they're kind of holding on to that, and there's no build on their investment or anything. It's kind of just saying they're stagnant. And I'm like, I get that, because I'm, like, scared to do anything that's too risky. And so, like, I'm like, I don't know what to do. But yeah. It's that also part that, like, the education, like, whether, and then do you know what you're doing, and then are you willing to take that risk? Right,
exactly.
It's just a lot of things. Like, finances are so crazy.
Yeah. You can get, like, drowned in all of that. Especially if it's, you know, it may not be a direct interest, but if it's, like, your livelihood and it's part of life, and it's something that, you know, these kind of decisions do make a difference. Because if you think about it, like, let's say you start your retirement plan at 30 years old. Imagine from the time that you got your first job, that's a lot of years of of money that, again, like the company, you're putting this money aside, but that company is basically, it's not just like a regular savings. And the regular savings, for the most part, you put it aside and that money's there. It stays there. But when you're doing the 401k, your company is basically like, your money's growing. Yeah. So it's not just like, oh, I set aside $5. 30 years from now, I'm going to look back and that's my $5. No, over time, it'll grow, I guess,
Yeah. Well, I mean, and that kind of brings into the next thing is like, when you kind of assign the percentage or the amount that you want to have set aside, you kind of also determine what kind of investment portfolio that you want to set up. So like, kind of where your money's getting put into so that it can grow.
Exactly.
So there's like stocks and then bonds and stuff like that. And it just kind of depends on how risky you want to get.
Exactly.
And
again, like back to your point, if you're not willing to risk it, then you can see it as, I don't want to risk it, I don't want to lose, but then you're missing out on that flip side. Well, what if you're not losing and you're gaining and you're investing and it's growing? Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, they usually like advise people that when you're younger to have a little bit more risk in your portfolio. That way, because you have that time to be able to build up in case something bad happens.
Gotcha.
But you still have that back savings that you're kind of setting aside for yourself, because you're not going to be completely risking 100% of your savings. You know what I mean? So you're going to have that little bit. And then when you get older, closer to retirement age, they want you to be less risky, because that's when you're going to need it.
Right, because you're getting closer to that time where you're going to be pulling that money out.
You're going to tap into that little fund,
Right. Now, before moving on, because I think this is a really good transition, but before moving on to our next topic, just like a quick, because I feel like this applies to what the world is kind of going on with right now. So if you happen to be in a position where you're going to have to change jobs, or let's say it's unfortunate, you got laid off, and when things pick back up, you're going to be changing jobs. So there are 4 things that usually happen, because let's say you have a 401k with your company. So one of the options is you can withdraw the money. Again, if you're young, this is not recommended. Like if you're not close to retirement, or you've built up your finances to where you can retire, it's not recommended to go ahead and do that, because like you mentioned, there is a penalty for doing so before your retirement age. The second thing would be to roll it over into an IRA, which is an individual retirement account. And then the third one would be leaving it with the old employer. Like there's nothing wrong with leaving it, but of course it also depends the amount and if your employer's okay with that. If the amount is too little, your employer may have the right to say, hey, we don't want to keep this. Yeah. And then the fourth one would be moving it to your new employer. So if you find yourself in this situation, that would be something to look into. Obviously, when you're starting someone new, don't forget, because a lot of people do forget about their 401k. You've invested this money and you leave it with your old employer, and you've moved on, let's say, to 3-4 jobs. You probably forgot about your initial ones, but make sure you can roll those over or move it to you, so it follows you. Because again, this money already came out of your paycheck. Might as well have it benefit you in the future. Exactly.
So, I mean, now I'm wondering what would happen if the new company that you had doesn't offer any 401k plans and you can't roll over to that?
I think then the option...
automatically?
I think the option would be leaving it with your old employer. And probably... So, you won't lose the money. The only thing is you won't be able to continue to, contribute so that it continues to grow. It'll just kind of be in that pool until you want to.
Okay.
Yeah. Now, I don't know the legalities of, when you can just call up your old employer and say, hey, I want to take out my, I don't know how.
Hey, give me my money.
Yeah, how all that works out. But, I do know those are the options. Now, one of the things that you were talking about was risk. And one of the things that comes with risk, and one of the things that is also very applicable to what the world is going on with, or what's happening in the world right now, is stocks.
Yeah.
Now, go ahead.
So basically, stocks are an investment in a company and that company's profits. So investors buy stock to earn a return on their investment. And so, the way I saw it was, basically you're not buying a part of a company. You're not going to sit in the boardroom with all the major people. But you're going to be kind of earning money and then be able to, sell that stock. Or kind of, I guess, cash out, I guess, on it,
Mm-hmm.
which is kind of where it's different from certain other things.
Right. So stocks is really just or is a way to build wealth. So you're like you said, you're making an investment with your own money from a share of a company that is issuing a stock. So the way I saw it was, let's use the company Coca-Cola, because we talked about Coca-Cola before. Let's say, just think of it as they have a really huge pie, and they're basically offering, I will give you a slice of this pie, and you get to choose if you want to buy that or not. Now, the way it works is you exchange, and I'm kind of skipping here a little bit, but on my notes, but when you exchange it, you're no longer exchanging it with that company. You're not saying, Coca-Cola, here's your pie back. What you're saying is, as a seller from this piece of pie, for example, me, I'm the seller and you want to buy a stock from it, you're basically buying my slice of pie.
Slice of pie.
And
I like that.
Yeah, so that's the way I had to picture it in a visual sense, because stocks to me when you say stocks, like it seems like a very, like, it's a concept, but I have to see it as something physical, like I'm basically buying a piece of pie from this company, which is a stock. And then if I want to sell it, I'm not selling it back to this company. I'm literally just reselling my piece of pie. Now, obviously, the way you make money is if the stock price, if the piece of the pie, the price of it goes up for what, let's say I bought it for $2, but it goes up for like $6, then that's when I would want to share it, because then I would be making a profit. So that's usually whenever that's how you get money. And then another way of making money is if the stock pays dividends, which is basically payments that are going to be made based off of the company's revenue that are going to be paid. I think they do quarterly payments. So
So like my teacher for that personal finance class I took, he was a stockholder. I don't know what the wording is, but for like this company, and he came in and he showed us like the shareholders like portfolio and stuff that they have, that they like email it to everybody who has owned stock in their company, which is kind of interesting. It's kind of like, hey, this is what we've been doing with the company, or basically what we've been doing with your money.
Right, because the company will sell the shares in their business to raise money. So when they sell it and you buy it, they're basically taking your money and they're using it maybe to introduce new initiatives that they have going on, projects that they're working with it. So it makes sense that, what your professor or teacher was doing is, that's exactly what it is. They're proving that we're using your money, that there's a reason why we raised this money was because we were going to go ahead and do this, and that. So again, sorry, real quick, you have the right to vote on some stuff, but like you said, it doesn't make you important enough to where you're going to sit in a board meeting and make these top exec, decisions and whatnot.
Yeah. I mean, which would be cool, but could you imagine the amount of people sitting in there?
Yeah. You would have to be extremely, into it and have that time, go out of your way to say, okay, yeah, I'm going to go to this board meeting. But, I mean, no.
But you can't just, buy stock in any company. That company has to go public with their stock in order for you to buy it. So it's not like you're, this private company, be like, hey, I want to buy part of your stock. No, the company has to be look, we're making it public for anybody to come and buy a piece of our pie.
And just like we were talking about 401k, if it's something that your company offers and it's available, same thing with stocks. There are some companies your employer may have a stock exchange or stock, I forgot what it's called. They have these acronyms. Basically, it's a purchase plan. So your own company will come to you as an employee and say, hey, are you willing to withhold a certain amount from your paycheck so that it could basically be invested in our stocks? And again, that money that they use, that they're taking from your paycheck, then they'll be giving you reports on what it was used for. And they tend to have, depending on the company, they tend to have openings every quarter in case you want to jump in and be a part of that. Now, every company has different rules on how they go about, when can you take the money back out? When can you sell? When can you do this and all that? But some companies do have that program available.
Yeah, and then to go back when we were talking about risk, there's different risk levels that you can kind of take even when buying stocks. Like, stocks on its own is kind of risky. Like, the stock market, like, plummets, constantly rises. It's kind of very unstable.
Right.
But, like, the certain stocks, like, if you go into, like, a super big company, like, if you were to invest in Apple, that's kind of not as risky, because you know that company's going to do well in the long term. At least you hope it is. But it's like, the riskier you get is by going into, like, smaller companies that are just opening up, just starting up, because you could lose all that money that you've invested into them.
Right. So that's why they say, you know, be careful who you're investing in. And, you know, like you said, even like a company like Apple, not to say that their stock can't go down. Usually when it does go down, like, drastically, is if, you know, there's like a recall in products, if they're having an event that happened, miscommunication. Like, it has to be something so major, like a mishap, that causes the stock to go down. Now, now that we're talking about, like, the fluctuating and all of that, so a stock market crash is a sudden drop in stocks within a day or a few days of trading. What that means is, across the board, all these stocks from different companies, a stock market crash will happen when they see that trend of all of these stocks just, like, drastically dropping across the board, you know. And so frightened sellers, I saw this sentence on the article, and I loved it. So frightened sellers cause market crashes. Because if you think about it...
because they're trying to get rid of it so quickly that it's just, like, they're selling it whatever they can get it for.
Right. And so, in a sense, what this article was saying is sometimes, you know, these people are making decisions out of emotion rather than, like, with their head. Like, you know, rather than thinking financially, okay, does this make sense? They suddenly get scared and they react, you know?
Yeah, so. It's kind of like, if you had taken out that emotion of it in a little bit, you wouldn't have caused this, like, giant storm.
Right.
But, I mean, it's not like one individual person. It's like multiple people having that same idea.
Right, and that's why it causes such a drastic... Now, again, we brought this up as well because, you know, why should a stock market crash matter to us? As a regular civilian, whether you invest in stocks or not, why does this matter? Well, usually, especially over the course of history... right after a crash usually comes like a recession, meaning that the economy will slow down. And if you haven't seen it firsthand personally already, a lot of companies are already laying people off. Now, in the world that we're living in right now, obviously we all know that there's this virus going around, which does cause some direct impact to how these companies are running. But also, especially oil and gas companies, are plummeting big time. And that has a lot to do with, you know, the stock market crashing. You know, again, like we said, if company A, it being an oil and gas company, relies on, or maybe not relies on, but uses a lot of the money that they raise from these stocks. And then suddenly, you know, let's say everyone's just like going crazy with it, and then they're losing that money that they've used, then it basically causes an effect. Like, you know, it's what do they call a snowball effect. So basically the way I read it, and this is the best way to explain it. So stocks are an important source of cash that corporations use to manage and grow their businesses. If stock prices fall dramatically, corporations have less ability to grow. Firms that don't produce will eventually lay off workers to stay solvent. As workers are laid off, they spend less, and a drop in demand means less revenue. That means more layoffs, and the decline continues. As the decline continues, the economy contracts, creating a recession. So basically, it's all just like a trickle-down effect.
It's just a huge, like, snowball.
Exactly.
Kind of deal. Yeah.
Right. So, hearing in the news that the stock market crashes, it's not to say, oh, you should be terrified, you should be scared. But it's as an informed... Well, who was it that said that... who was it? Oscar from The Office? When he... What was he... that one Halloween... The Halloween... When he was like an informed consumer? Or what was it?
I think so.
It was something like that. I don't know. He just came to mind. A what?
It's something consumer.
Yeah, something consumer. Yeah. Anyway, well, you know, just it's important to be aware of what is happening and why. It's not just suddenly, oh, the economy decided to slow down. No, it has a lot to do with, how these whole stocks and companies and it all comes together, really.
Well, it's kind of like a whole bunch of people don't have an understanding of what stocks are or how the stock market works, but much of our stability within the economy relies so highly on it that it's kind of like you need more people to understand why it's happening, what's going on, how you can help, basically by just spending money.
Right.
But it's kind of like, oh, I can't spend money because I just got laid off. Well, the stock, we can't help the economy because nobody's spending money. It's kind of like, what can we do?
Right.
And so there's a lot of frustration when it comes to this.
Yeah, I mean, think about it. You and I mean, are you in stocks?
No.
Okay.
I tried to be.
Yeah?
But then again, that's how I was saying, I couldn't risk it. I couldn't risk it for the biscuit, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I was, I had everything set up. I was gonna, I had contacted somebody, and I was like, you know what? I can't do this. I'm done. I can't. So I, backed away.
Yeah, I feel like, I mean, just me personally, what I've heard from people are just, I feel like stocks kind of gives off this very, well, obviously there's a risk to it, but from what I've heard so many stories of people losing out, and I think that tends to overshadow the opportunity to actually gain money or to earn something. Mm-hmm. So I know my brother's into stocks. He kind of, I don't know if he self-educated himself on it or not, but I think his performance or his firsthand experience has changed a little bit of how I view stocks, because his is in a much smaller scale, right? So for other people, you're thinking millions and millions, and just kind of how you're basically recycling that money. Okay, you gain it and then you put it back into the stocks, But for some, on a smaller scale, you start small, then you kind of see that turnaround. And sometimes it's not, oh, I gained $50,000, but just making that small, your first profit, I feel like then encourages you to try, and then, kind of like baby steps, right? You build yourself up to where you become more familiar, you become more aware of how the market is working and when it's smart to do so or not. But it also, I feel like it's kind of a game, if it's not something that you're willing to emotionally, because there is emotion involved. If you're not willing to emotionally involve yourself into the system, then there's that too. I feel like if I invested, I would probably want to be one of those people that would put it in, and then 50 years later I'd look back and be like, how's that doing?
Just forget about it.
Yeah, just kind of leave it there and let it do its thing.
Yeah, for retirement, it's so, you kind of have to either save pretty much all your money and just live on nothing while you're living your life, but what's that enjoyable about, or take some of your money and try to find a way to generate more money without really, this kind of sounds like a huge scam, generate money while doing nothing, sipping on a martini at home, but you have to you have to be able to create a way for you to live your life without having to work to kick the bucket, So there's a lot less risky ways to do it. There's bonds and whatnot. I don't remember all the other ones, but there's ways that you can do it. You're not gonna get so a quick return on it, and you're not gonna have a super high return on what you get. But it's still a way to save money for yourself in the future, and it's doing your future self a favor to risk a little bit now, than to kind of worry forever. What are you gonna do when you can't work anymore?
Right. That's true. That is true. And again, it's all based off of people's different circumstances. It's not a one size fits all. But
yeah, definitely.
At the very least, it's important to be aware that that's out there, that it's a thing, and that, if it's something that you feel you'd be interested in, hey, try it out. Again, it doesn't have to mean you start off investing $500.
Yeah.
Just...
There's ways you can invest $1 and see what that can do for you. Start small, definitely. Don't go investing like millions of dollars.
Right.
If like you have those available.
Right.
You know what I mean?
True.
Not that I do.
Right.
But,
Well, speaking of millions and tons of money and whatnot.
Making all that money.
Yes, we're gonna... Okay, so this one, like, I just got all, like, happy and excited because this is... I mean, I tend to get very upbeat over things that I love, absolutely love. So this next company that we're going to be talking about, I love. And for so many reasons, and rightly so. I mean, I think the world as a whole loves this company. I mean, there's a few haters out there, but that's okay. Everyone has their preferences. But for the most part, the consensus is we love Chick-fil-A.
Amen.
We sure do.
Yep.
So we're going to learn a little bit about them and their history, and then just talk about fun facts, because I found a lot of fun facts, and I think the world needs to know, especially if you are a Chick-fil-A lover. You should just know these things.
What's your go-to order? Quick, give it to me.
All right. Here's the thing, though. All right. I go in, and I tell myself, do I want something fresh? Do I want something hot? You know what I mean? Like, am I... Okay.
Yeah.
So if I'm going to go in and I want something hot, I want a good, hearty, hot meal, then I'm going to go in and I'm going to get the spicy deluxe meal. Half sweet tea, half unsweet tea. And that's my... Okay. But if I'm thinking, you know what? I don't want anything too heavy. I think something light and fresh would be good. Then I get the cool wrap. That's what it's called, right? It should be called that. So,
I've never gotten one of the wraps.
No? Okay.
No.
I love it. And then I get the Italian dressing on there or whatever.
That Italian dressing is pretty good.
Very good. So, also, I eat my waffle fries. I place them out. I ask for a ranch and I ask for a buffalo. And then I basically, I drizzle it on top. The buffalo, and I drizzle the ranch. And then those are like, it's amazing.
Have I never gone with you to Chick-fil-A? Because I don't remember ever seeing you do this.
Okay, so I used to order the number 1 deluxe, right? Okay. And I would get the buffalo sauce, and I would dip mine on there because I liked it spicy. Okay. But I think this past year I made the transition where I'm like, well, I wanted spicy anyway, so instead, and I would out of habit still get the buffalo sauce. Mm-hmm. So I realized, well, I don't want spicy with spicy. Like, I'm good with the spicy chicken itself. Yeah. So then that's when I, like, converted into, like, well, I love buffalo wings with ranch. So then that's kind of where the idea of, like, me doing the drizzle thing. So I definitely feast whenever I go. Like, I take my time and I enjoy it. What about you? What's your go-to?
I always get, because I'm a creature of habit, I always get a number 2 without pickles because I hate pickles. And then I get the waffle fries, but you can get them like
the chips.
No, you can get them like doubly fried. I remember it was a special order that I used to do, but then I stopped doing because it was an extra thing. But it's like a way for you to get them like crispier and fresher. Oh. And then I order, like, a whole bunch of... Or I get a whole bunch of Chick-fil-A sauce, because I love Chick-fil-A sauce, with a sweet tea. But, like, one time I went, and, like, they called me out on how much Chick-fil-A sauce, because they were like, oh, with 2 Chick-fil-A sauces? And they were like, oh, I'm sorry, with 4. I was like, okay, sorry. I like Chick-fil-A sauce, man.
That's funny. My brother-in-law really likes it, too. He's, like, obsessed with the sauce. Sometimes all he wants to do is order fries. And I'm like, okay, I get that the fries are really great, but you gotta eat. Like, that's not, like, a full meal. Like, just get the full meal with the fries, and then enjoy the fries first if you have to. But eat something. But I guess that's our thing, but let's go way back a little bit, and then we'll talk about
to the beginning.
Cool stuff. Yeah. Do you have that?
Yeah, so, originally, the founder, who is S. Truett Cathy, correct, opened up a place called the Dwarf House, and so, after that, became, like, super, super, like, successful? Mm-hmm. Thank you for the word, Carolina. He then, like, decided to open up a fast food chain, which is Chick-fil-A, and that opened in in Atlanta in 1967.
Yep, and ironically enough, I don't know if you read this, but the Dwarf House, their menu was mainly focused on hamburgers and steaks.
Yeah. And there's still some open, which kind of surprised me. There's still 12 Dwarf House restaurants.
Yeah, I read that. I was like, okay, I guess.
Like, you never hear about that one. I mean, I guess it's only 12, but still.
Right, that's true. But I guess, I mean, their fame got overshadowed by this glorious and wonderful chicken. Now, there's actually only 3 states in the U.S. that don't have a Chick-fil-A location. That being Hawaii, Alaska, and Vermont. Mm-hmm. But there is, I think I read, there is a Hawaiian, themed Chick-fil-A.
Yeah.
So, we'll just count that as it being in Hawaii. So then that just leaves 2 states. That just puts 2 of them. Now, I don't know if you knew this, or if you did before you researched it, that the A in Chick-fil-A is not just like a play on the word filet, Chick-fil-A. Yeah. But it also stands for grade A.
See, I feel like I didn't know that, but I also feel like I did. But I'm going to go with I didn't. Because I could just be making things up in my head.
I feel like I had read it before somewhere. And then I thought right then and there, wow, that's so cool, it's so clever. And then I forgot about it years later, and then I read this again, and I was like, oh, wow, it makes more sense. And then I asked myself the same question, didn't I already read this? But I think that's really cool. And if it's not absolutely 100% accurate, well, it still makes sense. Now, obviously, we all know that Chick-fil-A does not open on Sundays, so I think it's pretty cool. I mean, except for when you're really craving it, really craving it on a Sunday.
It's always on Sunday where you're like, you know what I really want? I want some Chick-fil-A. And they're like, wait, it's Sunday. I can't get that.
Yep.
Yeah. So, Kathy, who was the owner, he actually wrote 6 books and was a committed philanthropist throughout his life, deciding that he wanted to make a difference in the lives of the youth. So that's why Chick-fil-A has, a whole bunch of scholarships, college scholarships for, people who work there. It's because he really wanted to make a difference in those, young people.
Oh, wow. Yeah. That's awesome. Good for them. Now, speaking of him, he actually passed away in 2014, but he made his children agree that they would stay a private company. They were still allowed to sell if they wanted to, but that it had to maintain a private company. Which, I mean, I think it's hey, man, stay true to... your
core values. And I feel like that's kind of what it was. But, I mean, the amount of success they've had is insane. I think I read that they were soon to surpass, to be the 3rd most successful company.
Right, fast food chain. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there we go. That's the word.
Yep. Now, Chick-fil-A actually has this thing, and I don't know if you know this either, but I didn't know this, and I think all hardcore Chick-fil-A lovers should know this, and I don't know why they haven't announced this, but Chick-fil-A has a thing called the First 100 Campout, which means that when there's going to be a new Chick-fil-A that is about to open, the first 100 customers will get rewarded for free Chick-fil-A for a year.
Mm-hmm.
Now,
I actually knew a girl who won it.
Really?
Yeah.
That's
so it's
awesome.
It's this card that they get. It's they're allowed one Chick-fil-A sandwich or one meal per week, I think.
Wow.
Yeah. So it's basically 52.
Oh, okay. Wow, but
meals.
Still that's.
I
mean, think about it. We live in Houston. How many Chick-fil-A's did not get open? Recently, too.
Yeah.
There's literally... when I read this, I was so frustrated because there's literally one that opened, probably a year and a half ago.
Right down the street.
4 minutes, yes, from my house. And, I mean, had I known, come on, that's more doable to be able to do, or to be able to, be the first 100. I'm okay with camping out. It's Chick-fil-A. For the next one.
So, So, speaking about the Chick-fil-A sauce, I know we were talking about earlier, the inventor, kind of say, was this guy, Hugh Fleming.
Mm-hmm.
So he was like the owner of one of the Chick-fil-A's. And so, like, what his company had done, like, some of the workers there had created a deal with a different restaurant that was nearby to, like, kind of trade food throughout the day.
Mm-hmm.
And so the other people at the restaurant were asking for a new sauce, or, like, for a sauce to, like, put their nuggets with. And so, Hugh Fleming had this, honey mustard recipe that he had.
Mm-hmm.
And so he kind of used that, and everybody loved it. And he was like, you know what, but what if I add barbecue sauce to this? And so he added barbecue sauce to it, and so it's kind of now what is Chick-fil-A's so kind of amazing, popular sauce.
Wow, that's cool. Also, waffle fries are the most ordered menu item, which doesn't really surprise me.
It surprised me. I would have thought, Chick-fil-A chicken.
Well, I guess
chicken
it's
family.
True, but I guess it's because the fries are going to come with the meal. So if you're going to go in to eat, you're going to get it. But, and I don't know if you've done this before, but sometimes, like, my sister and I would drive together, and we would just be craving, like, McDonald's fries, right? So we would go through the drive-thru and just get some fries. So it's kind of like the same concept. Like, you're going to get the fries regardless, but if you're not in the mood for a meal, like my brother-in-law, you're probably just going to go in and buy fries. So,
I mean, I guess that makes sense. And then talking about the fries, they actually partner with farmers in Washington State to get the potatoes, because they're from like a mineral rich Columbia River basin. Oh. So like they get their potatoes from a very specific place.
Wow. I also saw that they ordered a lot of I think it was lemons for their lemonade.
Yes. It's like Sunkist.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then they also what was it? They order a lot of peanut oil, I believe it was.
Yeah, they're like the highest one for peanut oil, peanut butter. Or is that? Yeah, but they use a lot of peanut oil.
Yep.
So I'm wondering if like you have a peanut allergy if you can't order. Does that work with the oil?
Huh, maybe we can do allergies in the future.
That's true.
Kind of like we do with phobias, yeah. Because, I'm not rubbing it in, but I don't have an allergy, so it's one of those things, like, when it doesn't apply to you, sometimes you kind of just don't bother, I guess, to, I don't know.
My main one's just cats, so.
What do you mean?
Which sucks, because I love cats. I'm allergic to cats.
Oh, really?
It's not a food allergy.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh, oh my goodness, that's funny. Now, opening a Chick-fil-A franchise is actually pretty cheap in consideration to the other, I guess, fast food restaurants or franchises that you want to open.
Yeah, it's like
$10,000,
right?
Right, but then the best part is that they pay for real estate, they pay for construction, and for the restaurant equipment. Now, the only downside to it is because it is so cheap, there's like a huge, like there's high competition for it. They'll have a ton of people apply, but they'll only pick like 75 to 80 people to actually open the franchise.
Yeah.
So that's about less than 1% of a possibility if you applied for it to actually get it.
Yeah. I mean, sorry. My current boss, his wife, like, she's the person that goes and helps you set up everything. Mm-hmm. And so she's, like, kind of the communication between, like, corporate and stuff, and the people who are, like, working up and setting up, and they, like, go in and train everybody.
Wow.
And so, yeah, she was actually, they were setting up, like a red member party. Mm-hmm. So, like, everybody within that area, they would go and have a party at this new Chick-fil-A because they were trying to get, like, customers from, like, other Chick-fil-A restaurants.
Oh.
Yeah. I should have asked him about this topic.
Wow.
Hey, give me your info.
That is so cool. Inside scoop. Love it. Let's see. I also read that they make their own pickles.
Yeah.
Which I think is pretty cool. I mean, that's some dedication.
I mean, I don't like pickles, so.
I love pickles. Love them. I think aside from that was the main thing that I got from from them, aside from the personal experience and love that I have for Chick-fil-A. Have you ever dressed up for one of their, like, cow days? Or
No, have you?
No. Every time so when I see it happen, I'm amazed by it, and then I tell myself, oh, okay, I'm going to do it next time. And then it happens again, and I'm like, dang, I know, like, heads up or anything like that, so I always miss it.
I didn't do it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, I know that the chicken nuggets that they have
Mm-hmm.
kind of took a really long time for them to kind of come up with. It took a lot of time and a lot of money.
Mm-hmm.
So, hold on. I'm trying to find, like, something.
I think it took them, like, 7 years.
Yeah, it was, like, 7 years and, like, $3 million, something like that.
Yeah, to come up with their nugget.
Their nuggets, yeah. Which is such a tiny little thing that you wouldn't think it would take all that money. You're like, why don't you just cut up, kind of chicken strips?
Mm-hmm.
But it was like a very, like, huge thing for them to get it exactly right to their specificity. Right. So I guess that A in their name kind of fits.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, Chick-fil-A. Love them, love them, love them.
Love some Chick-fil-A. But, I mean, I guess that's all I have. 401k stocks and Chick-fil-A.
Yeah, they kind of come in with a nice, comforting topic at the end there after a lot of...
Right. I wonder how many people by the end of this are going to crave Chick-fil-A so bad.
I'm craving Chick-fil-A. I wish I would have gotten that today.
So,
I'm going to do it tomorrow.
I would say this every time, but if you made it to the end, thank you. And next time you get Chick-fil-A, just tag us in there. The world may not know why you're tagging us in there, but we know why. Because episode 6 of Morning Coffee, we talked about Chick-fil-A. And also add in one of our fun facts, like, knowledge is power. The more you know, like, pass it on.
Yeah, use anything you learn in here to be like, hey, did you know so-and-so and blah, blah, blah.
Right.
So you can be cool at parties and people like, oh, how'd you learn that? Be like, oh, this cool new podcast.
Called Morning Coffee.
Called Morning Coffee with Carolina and Marilyn.
Who are super awesome. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right.
And that's how we get big.
Exactly. And then we come back, and then buy you Chick-fil-A.
Yeah. Do it.
For sure. Well, that's what we have. It's a wrap. Haha. Oh, that's so cool if you think about it. It's a wrap. Chick-fil-A wrap.
Oh, it's a wrap.
It's a cool wrap. So.
Not so cool anymore.
Okay. Well, hope you guys have a wonderful morning, afternoon, evening, whatever it is.
Whenever you listen to this.
Exactly. Bye, guys.
All right, guys. Bye.
Bye.